Good morning, gentlemen. This is a lesson video on chapters 4 and 5 of the Animal Farm. Before we begin, please prepare your highlighters and colored pens. Do make sure that you are taking down annotations and, more importantly, think through the concerns and issues that George Orwell would like you to understand through the text. If you have any other thoughts and opinions of the text, do take them down as well. Your thoughts are equally valuable when it comes to the study of the Animal Farm. As you begin to read the Animal Farm, be sure to note the key themes that we will need to take note of as we approach the text: power and control, corruption, and relationships. These are also the very themes that reflect the issues that many people of our generation continue to struggle and overcome in the political scene. Looking into Chapter 4, we will begin to study the concerns and issues stemmed from the power and influence of animalism, use of the language in creating propaganda and shifting the ideas of the animals, power struggles between men and animals, the alliances amongst men that apparently failed due to personal gains, selfish desires, and our inherent nature of greed, the battle of the cowshed, as well as the meaning of sacrifice. As we have gone through this page in the previous session, we will continue on to the next page. We will continue from where we left off. In page 42, we will begin to study how the ineffectiveness of the farmers has caused the very downfall of their leadership positions in the respective farms. In spite of recognizing that the influence of animalism is known everywhere, they were unaccepting and chose to be in denial of the spread of this ideology by pretending to think it merely ridiculous. Instead of accepting or considering strategies to overcome the influence of animalism, they chose to ridicule to retain their power and confidence as leaders. The significance of the song, which is seen when the author said that the song was irrepressible, has extensively shown that there is an impact of it on the humans. The humans secretly trembled, hearing in it a prophecy of their future doom. The shift in power was so real and nearing, and there is a sense of helplessness in the farmers in trying to stop the influence. Moving on to page 43, we begin to see the battle between the men and animals. It seemed as if every step was deliberately and intentionally planned out in attaining victory for the animals. And these strategic and intentional moves are the very qualities adopted by the leaders of Animal Farm, which are also the pigs, in retaining their power later throughout the chapters. In pages 44 and 45, the manipulative and scheming nature of Snowball is seen through his planning as Snowball had intended it. Through the battle, we also begin to see the characterization of Boxer as the most terrifying spectacle of all, rearing up on his hind legs and striking out with his great iron short hooves like a stallion. The use of simile has reflected his admirable strength that also raises the possibility and chances of winning during this conflict. We can also draw a contrast of how Boxer was undermined later in chapter 8 when he loses his abilities due to the cause of Animal Farm that he has been pursuing in trying to be more productive and laborious at the same time. It also became apparent that the battle has instilled a lot of fear in the farmers as panic overtook them. Gentlemen, remember that panic only comes when one is clueless about the subsequent steps that he can take, and it raises vulnerability in the situation. In page 45, you will see the ritualistic approach to the use of the flag and the repetition in the song Beasts of England to depict the propaganda approach that the pigs are taking on to redefine a sense of purpose in every animal. When Snowball said, "No sentimentality, comrade," the tone was rather merciless. It was also firm, so that in it they begin to shift the perspective of the animals. War is war. The only good human being is a dead one. The use of imagery and the tone of assertion also deliberately sustains the victory and the power of the animals above the human beings. And lastly, in page 46 of the Animal Farm, we begin to see that the emphasis on celebrating the Battle of the Cowshed and commemorating it over a year, in every year, is to establish a proud sense of purpose and motivation for the animals, in trying to continuously remind the animals that they have gained victory through their own strength, through their unity, and through the leadership of the pigs. In closing, I would like you gentlemen to actually start thinking about the following questions. You really need to think through: how did the animals play a role in establishing the leadership on Animal Farm? What is the intention of the yearly commemoration of the Battle of the Cowshed, and how does it affect and sustain loyalty within the Animal Farm? Looking to Chapter 5, the concerns and themes are disobedience and breaking away from status quo, tension and differences in leadership and viewpoints, influence and propaganda, as well as corruption in leadership. Gentlemen, I would also like you to keep in mind that whenever you study literature, the study of language, how the words are being put together, the phrases that the author chooses to use, are all intentional and deliberate in delivering a message to the readers. So, in Chapter 5, Orwell started the chapter with Molly to establish the tension between the animals and the leaders. The tension is seen through Molly's defiance of orders enforced by the leaders and fellow animals. In the earlier chapters, they have already established that no animal shall interact with men. Yet, Molly has indirectly betrayed and defied the orders that are in place. She seemed friendly and amiable with the common enemy of the animals, which is men, by being caught reaching out to Mr. Pilkington on the other side of the hedge. In the first paragraph, the characterization of Molly is seen through how she would stand foolishly gazing at her own reflection in the water. This shows that she is rather vain and narcissistic. She is also very self-obsessed. Also, with how she complained of the mysterious pains, although her appetite was excellent, shows a contradiction in how she wants to behave, as if she is hiding behind a facade. Not only is she spoiled and unwilling to cooperate or accept the rules of the new system, it also makes us question whether one's individuality is being robbed, because later in the page you will see that she has to do everything in discretion. She has to do everything secretly. She has to hide under the straw a little pile of lump sugar and several bunches of ribbon of different colors, which also make us question her loyalty. So what happens when one does not conform to the expectations of the farm? Is there really free will for anyone? If there is tension, it seems that tension lies in the fact that some people will be gotten rid of, people who fall behind the ideals of animalism and defies breaking away from the issue of loyalty. At the start of page 50, it became apparent that the animals live in the fear of being ousted by the pigs from the farm. It also shows that they are highly dependent on the idea of being a part of it. To protect oneself, one has to detach themselves from any emotions. And this is seen when Orwell depicted that none of the animals ever mentioned Molly again. This shows that the animals are willing to separate themselves from anything, anyone, that defy the rules of a leader. The helplessness and passivity of the animals is also largely derived from the concept that the pigs are intellectually more capable than the rest of them. This evidence can be seen on page 50, on the look at the green highlighted part. They have come to accept that the pigs, who are manifestly cleverer than the other animals, should decide all questions of farm policy, though their decisions had to be ratified by the majority vote. The eventual state of a totalitarian system on the farm is when one person constantly has a say while the rest are silenced. And this is clearly seen when they have given the pigs the power to make decisions on all policies of the farm. However, we do not only see one leader. In fact, there are two strong voices and school of thoughts. And when that happens, how does one retain leadership and power without having the other to back down? To allow dictatorship to effectively be in place, it seems that Orwell is questioning the process of how this is done, and he does it through the use of contrast and juxtaposition between Snowball and Napoleon. Napoleon is portrayed as knowledgeable on page 51. He is described as someone who is learned about the field drains, silage, and basic slag, and had worked out a complicated scheme for all the animals to drop their dung directly in the fields. It seems practical, and it seems that also his knowledge has induced trust in the animals so that they are confident in his leadership, that they can put their trust in him leading the people in Animal Farm. The fact that he can actually consider the issues that the animals face has gained sympathy for himself by resolving the issues that have been there for a long time. On the other hand, Snowball is someone who is more charismatic and on the people skills. In page 50, if you look at the bottom of the page, the purple highlighted area, Snowball often won over the majority by his brilliant speeches. But Napoleon, on the other hand, is better at canvassing support for himself in between times. This shows that Napoleon is not only convincing, he has the verbatim of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That constant repetition is to establish empowerment for the animals. Now, gentlemen, if you look back at page 51, I want you to also take note that the contrast between Napoleon and Snowball, the way they are being depicted already shows that they are opposite, people of opposite characters. If you look at the part that I've circled, the windmill, I would like you to remember that the windmill is the symbol of industrialization and the beginning of the Russian Revolution. Whether there is true progress because of the limitations of the animals is highly debatable, and we will discuss more when we go on to the later chapters in class. On pages 52 and 53, you will constantly see the relationship between Snowball and Napoleon. On page 52, you will begin to see that Snowball is actually someone who is rather honest and perceptive. He is willing to tell the people the truth, because Snowball did not deny that to build a windmill would be a difficult business. He was very honest with the people and preparing them for what the future could come. But you will see that Napoleon, on the other hand, is very disrespectful. It also hints at the tyranny of the system due to his attitude. One day, however, he arrived unexpectedly to examine the plans. Not only did he examine the plans, it seemed that he did it with mockery, with sarcasm, with condescension, because he suddenly lifted his leg and urinated over the plans and walked out without uttering a word. The very plans that Snowball has created for the animals to take note of. This act of urinating over the plans actually proves a sense of humiliation towards Snowball. He sees himself more superior, but the means and the ways that he get onto his leadership is very questionable. If you look into page 52, the bottom of the page, at the center and near the bottom, you will see that Napoleon is someone who taps on the struggles that the animals are fearful of, while Napoleon will tap on the ideals. He will say things like, you only have to work 3 days a week if we have the windmill. But Napoleon will say things like, we would all starve to death. The use of hyperbole is to exaggerate and exacerbate the fear that the animals already have to make them stand on his side. I would also like you to consider, how did Snowball exert his influence and leadership? And how is it different from Napoleon? On page 53 at the bottom of the page is the conflict about the windmill. The windmill is so significant because not only does it represent industrialization within the farm, it is also the very tool that Napoleon taps on to go against Snowball. Napoleon stood up to reply that the windmill was nonsense and that he advised nobody to vote for it. And in 30 seconds, he seemed almost indifferent as to the effect he had produced. You can imagine Napoleon to say this in a very terse and curt tone, which seems as though he has assumed that the animals should not vote for, the windmill, and brings out all the difficulties and challenges that they would face if they go for it. You can see that the animals are rather divided and in doubt of who to vote and whose side to stand on. On pages 54 and 55, you will begin to see the conflict between the animals as well as Napoleon and Snowball. At the top of the page, you will begin to see that Snowball painted a picture of Animal Farm as it might be when sordid labor was lifted from the animal's back. As mentioned earlier, he really taps on the ideals that he wished the animals to have in a tone that is very eloquent and able to sympathize with the laborious nature of work that the animals go through. On the other hand, we see a very cunning and scheming nature to Napoleon. As we see in the middle of the page, he used a high-pitched whimper of a kind no one had ever heard him utter before, and there was a terrible baying sound outside, and 9 enormous dogs wearing brass-studded collars came bounding into the barn. The use of the imagery not only shows that Napoleon is scheming and ruthless, but that he is a leader who is not accountable to the rest of the animals. He has taken on decisions by himself. He has disobeyed the rule where majority has to be a part of the decision on page 50. At the bottom of the page, you will witness that the animals are silent and terrified and crept back into their barns because they have already witnessed the possible doom that will happen to them if they defy Napoleon, if they disagree with Napoleon, or if there is any form of disobedience. There is this emotional and mental abuse, and Napoleon's corruption is his approach of retaining loyalty of the animals in the farm. At the bottom of the page, you will see that these dogs that came for Snowball were the puppies who Napoleon had taken away from their mothers. It also shows the power of education, how it shapes one's thoughts from young, defining it to believe and live in accordance to the will that Napoleon has set. And we see that these dogs are extremely loyal to him because on page 55 at the top of the page, their actions, how they wagged their tails to him, and this is an expression of loyalty in itself. The animals would still assemble on Sunday mornings to salute the flag and sing Peace of England and receive their orders for the week, but there will be no more debates. The use of the absolute word no actually shows that the animals are silenced. They no longer have a voice of their own to actually determine what they want to do or have any form of opinions. They will all keep it to themselves. And the reason why Napoleon does this is to remind them that he is still the leader above all, although the very action that he has committed contradicts to the beasts of England and what they believe in. At the bottom of the page, you realize that he's trying to rectify the problem by using the words of camaraderie and unity again. Comrades, I trust that every animal here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking this extra labor upon himself. The use of unity and the tone of empathy is a convincing way to reach to the hearts of the animals. Page 56, we have already gone through most of it, so let's go on to page 57. In the middle of the page where the purple highlighter is, I would like you to look at after the consequences of Snowball's expulsion. Snowball's expulsion. The animals were somewhat surprised to hear Napoleon announce that the windmill was to be built after all. So you see, Napoleon is just someone who uses fear, tyranny, exploitative measures as a means to get to what he wants. He does not justify to the animals the cause or the reasons to every action that he takes. He does not account to them. And this can be seen when they said he did not give any reasons for having changed his mind, but merely warned the animals that this extra task would mean very hard work. You realize that the power of language can manipulate and also redefine the way people think as well as the way they look at unto you. However, you will see that Napoleon is hardly the one who actually disseminates all this news. He has a little speaker called Squealer who constantly do things in private and away from the eye of the public. What do I mean? In page 57, you look at the bottom of the page. He speaks to the animals privately, in discretion, because he wants to reach out to the animals on a very personal level. At the bottom of the page, you will see that here Squealer looked very sly, that he said was Comrade Napoleon's cunning. Totalitarianism is propagated by the perspective that will show how Napoleon as a leader has a heart for the people. But it is not Squealer who said that Napoleon is cunning, but it is George Orwell. He, as a third-person narrator, is portraying the manipulative nature of Squealer in convincing the people of the good nature of Napoleon so that they'll be motivated to work for him. Gentlemen, I have said before that the animals are often helpless and they do not speak their minds, not only because they are uneducated, but because they are passive and they are inferior. It is seen in chapter 2 and now we see it again in chapter 5. On page 58, we see the vulnerability of the animals again, being silenced, being helpless, being the very cause of the tyranny of the system as well. You cannot just think that Napoleon is the reason why the system is corrupted. The animals themselves, because they do not speak, they do not have any discernment on what is good for them, have also been the cause of the downfall in the ideal that Old Major has for Animal Farm. Page 58. The animals were not certain what the word meant, but Squealer spoke so persuasively. And the last line, they accepted his explanation without further questions. It is the tone of submission adds to the powerlessness of the animals, and when they are powerless, it increased the dominance of Napoleon over them. Also, you must remember that the animals also play a significant role in ensuring the productivity of the farm. Gentlemen, I would like to end with this. How is dictatorship established? What led to the corruption of the system? Why couldn't Napoleon accept Snowball as a co-leader? How did the animals play a significant role in the effect of the tyranny on the animal farm? With that, I would also like you to think about your role as an individual with opinions. Do you remain passive or are you active individuals who have a say and who could make a change to the system that you are in? All the best for your exams.